recording, and here we go. Well, alright, this is Dilly Bar, and today I have a guest named Vashi Blumenkratz.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very excited. This is my first podcast, and I can't wait to get started.
Oh, yeah. Today's topic is, I believe, mulattoes.
Yes, as a lot of people know, I am a mulatto, and basically, I'm here today to talk about, basically the issues of identity crisis when it comes to being mixed race. As you know, we're living in a time where, a lot of people are really trying to find their place in the world, and it's especially difficult for a person of mixed race descent because just a lot of pressures on society. Um, I'm sure we've all heard at some point that somebody wasn't black enough or they weren't white enough.
Right. My understanding is that mulattoes are often not welcome in either the white or black community, in many cases.
Yes, that's very true. For the white community, it's more so like because you have that whether it's black or Asian or Latino, you're seen as like you're you're above like the fully blacks or fully Latinos, but you're not exactly white enough to be with them. And then when it comes to like with the blacks, it's more so like, well, you got white in you, so you obviously hate black people. You're trying to act white, which is really the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It
I've
kind of
had
it kind of
yeah,
reminds me of an elementary school story, and I can't remember what its name was, but it was about a black school, and the lighter skinned black kids were the dominant kids in the school, and the darker skinned black kids were like the inferiors, and nobody really liked them, and their teachers preferred the lighter skinned students, and so on and so forth, and it was a very weird thing.
yeah. It's called colorism.
Colorism.
It's basically like it's kind of like racism, but since it's like in one race, you can't really like say so like instead of like race, they use like skin tones. Like me, I'm a lighter skin because both of my parents are lighter than me actually,
Yeah.
and we actually have a joke in my family where, sometimes they'll say that I was adopted because they're really white. Like both of my parents can pass for fully white,
Really?
and then there's me. Yeah, because both of them are also mulattoes. They're half German and half black.
Both of them?
And yes,
Hmm.
yeah,
That's interesting.
I was blessed with very good ancestry, and I'm like a shade darker than them.
Mhm.
So like we kind of joke about how like, oh, I'm actually adopted, but that's not the case, luckily. But yeah, going back to colorism, it is a thing like mostly in the black community where the lighter skin, historically, the lighter skinned slaves when they were brought over to the Americas were kept in like the houses and they were like the master's favorite and most trusted slaves, whereas the darker ones were more of the field working type. Hence why you have the terms house Negro and field Negro.
Oh yeah, I believe I learned about that back in high school and whatnot, and I've read about it in other things. Yeah, the difference between the house Negro and the field Negro and all that. Of course, we still hear about it often today in pop culture and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
if a black
I've
person.
heard a lot, especially with my affiliations.
Hmm.
I've been called a house Negro, and I use Negro because the NIGGR one.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you'll be saying it on the podcast,
Oh yeah, we
but
might get a show it from like YouTube or something. It can happen. It can happen.
but yeah, I've had that term used on me because I refuse to believe the leftist bullshit where they like to put on this false show where like they try to virtue signal to the black community.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been called House Negro. I've been called Uncle Tom.
Mm.
Now remember, the same people who claim to be fighting against racism are the ones who are using racial slurs against me.
I've seen that
So that
happen a
really,
lot.
yes,
It's
so
the
that really
weirdest
tells
thing.
you a lot.
It's the strangest thing because that term was, man, I was that term even like it's the name of a character from a book, right? What?
Yeah, Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Yes, and I don't think he really matches the term that they're.
Yeah, and I always find it ironic because if you read the book Uncle Tom Cabin, the way that the character is in the book is completely opposite of how people in society use it today. Uh, it's to my understanding that the character that was Uncle Tom was actually a big supporter of black freedom and ending slavery. So if anything, he should be a role model and a figure to look up to.
Yeah, I remember. I don't think I ever read it in full, but I do remember that like he did he not die trying to gain his freedom or trying to gain the freedom of some other people in the process?
I don't recall. It's been so long. I haven't read that book, and by reading I mean I haven't skimmed it since like sixth grade.
That's what I did in college anyway. I just skimmed these books and made B's and
Yeah,
A's and tests, so you know.
but yeah, and so yeah, and basically like with the whole thing with colorism, whereas the lighter skin, the women that were of lighter skin were usually the ones that had the affairs with the slave master,
Hmm.
bringing in the mulatto children,
Hmm.
whereas the darker skinned slaves were usually raped,
Oof.
like just outright.
Oh man.
But uh, but yeah, colorism is a big issue in the black community, more so in the African American community than in say like pure African communities in countries like Nigeria and stuff like that.
Yeah, I believe
Because
different history.
yeah, yeah, because it all goes to this false perceived notion of some type of privilege for being lighter skinned or being mixed race and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Well, I have heard, and correct me if I'm wrong. You know, mulattoes like typically like well specifically in this case it would be white and black. Typically have higher IQs than African Americans on average and do perform better in schools and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I can tell you since I'm still currently in schooling. I'm in college right now, but even growing up, that in the schools that I went to, that there was a clear difference if you look at the races of the students and how they performed in academics.
Hmm.
You would find that most of the well, at the top would be the Asians, and then like you would have the whites, and then you would have the biracial kids, and then you would have the African Americans, the pure African Americans at the bottom, with most of the Latinos that had just came to the country and knew very little English. And this is why I'm a big follower of eugenics because I do believe that race isn't just like a concept. I do believe race is a real thing.
Hmm.
And if you look at, and for the simple fact that if you look at, you look in the animal kingdom, evolution is a very real thing. Some species evolve with abilities that give them a greater advantage over others. So why is it that it seems that a lot of people want to exempt humans from this rule?
They're creationists when it comes to humans.
Yeah, they want to pick and choose when science applies to them. And like for example, if you look at the NBA, a majority of the NBA, about 70% is black.
Yeah,
Are
high
you telling
athleticism.
me that? Yeah, are you telling me that has nothing to do with evolution and blacks being more genetically predisposed to be have more like muscle mass and more athletic ability than say Hispanics, whites, and Asians? I don't believe that. If Because trust me, I know a lot of white people that are fans of the NBA,
Yeah,
but genetically there's just a difference.
I think the difference is pretty clear as day. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
mean you could even look at
and
what is it? The Olympics today. I mean, look at these people. They're very, in some cases, the
yeah,
races are almost segregated between different teams in
yeah,
a weird way.
yeah. If you look at the track and field sports, a lot of them are black.
Yeah,
And then when you get into the more skillful sports like the swimming and the what else is it? The javelin throwing.
yeah.
That's where you see like a lot more whites and stuff like that.
I wonder why that is. Maybe it's the same reason that quarterbacks are usually white.
Yeah,
I wonder about
that's
that.
a perfect example too. I'm a big fan of the NFL, and I can tell you that white quarterbacks on average have longer careers than black quarterbacks. Not not because of athletic ability, but more so because they're able to better handle that leadership role.
Maybe that's
Like
it.
there are a lot of talented black quarterbacks, but if you look at the football IQ, basically that's being able to memorize plays, being able to memorize film, and being able to read the defense and stuff like that. A lot of those quarterbacks that do it best are white.
Yeah, I mean it's like I don't know how many quarterbacks has the NFL had that are black. I don't know. Usually they're
Uh,
white.
current Currently in the NFL, if my memory serves me correct,
Hmm.
there are well last season there was Cam Newton, there was Jamie Winston, and who else was there? There was the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, so that's three. Um, who else was there? AFC South, no. AFC West, no. Well, there's Kaepernick too, but I don't really count Kaepernick because he's half white.
Kaepernick. Wasn't that
But
the guy who was always taking the knee and whatnot?
yeah, he was the one protesting oppression in America. I wish I could make $100 million a year and be oppressed.
Oh man.
You know, according to him, he grows up in a white supremacist society. I'm sure his white adopted parents really appreciated hearing that.
Oh yeah. I'm
I
sure they
gave my
did.
best years to this little niglet, and this is how he repays me. But yeah, but Kaepernick is an issue in itself because again, he showcases just how out of touch these superstar celebrities are.
Oh yeah.
There was an yeah, there was an incident where he basically praised Fidel Castro
I heard about that.
and basically saying that Cuba had a high literacy rate. He basically said that even though Fidel Castro was a brutal dictator, at least he cared about education. And citing an example of that would be the high literacy rate in Cuba, which is about 99%. But he failed to take into account that in Cuba they have a very strict curriculum and they tell you what you can and can't read.
Yep.
So you don't really have a choice of whether you want to read or not. Well, actually, you do. You can either read what they tell you to read, or you can go to jail.
You can die. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
actually kind of wonder
and
if they're telling the truth about their literacy rating.
probably not. I mean, a lot of these countries, what they like to do is they like to keep out UN workers and Human Rights Watch,
Yeah.
and they basically just tell them anything. I remember one time there was a report. I forgot which country it was. It was a third world shithole, and basically the report they gave to the UN was that there was 0% poverty in this country, and this was a horrible country. Inflation was on Venezuelan level.
Ooh, what was the country again?
I can't remember. It
It
was
might be Zimbabwe.
no, not Zimbabwe. It was another one. It was during the 2008 global financial crisis.
Hmm. Might have been Venezuela. I don't know.
Yeah, it was one of them.
Yeah,
But
we're
yeah,
getting off onto
uh,
a tangent over here.
yeah, yeah. We're getting off the topic. Going back to the race mixing and the mulatto. So like yeah, race mixing does at time have its advantage, but it has but like that's usually in cases where it's selective, where it's a where both people are educated, obviously, but more so when you have a educated white and an educated black, it can have some benefits. For example, for example, my family, we are less likely to get the sickle cell disease,
Right.
which blacks are more likely out of all races to get. My family, since a lot of us are like mulattoes, we're not likely to get that.
Right.
And another thing is I have pretty like straight hair.
Mm-hmm.
So like if we go on to physical appearance, I have like straight hair. Well, straight is I have like 3 to 4 different textures, which gets annoying. So like the top gets straight, but like then it like curls towards the bottom, towards the roots.
Hmm.
So that's an issue in itself. Uh, you know, I'm light skinned, like I said. Both my parents and my brother and my sister are lighter than me. I'm the darkest one in my family, unfortunately. Um, and I would say I'm pretty average height. I'm about 5'10". I've been trying to make it to 6 feet for like the past 2 years.
Yeah, it's about my height. Five
Yeah,
ten.
and if we go on to like education wise, a lot of uh, a lot of mixed race kids tend to have it like they tend to be more academically successful than like say being like a pure race black.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Again, going back to genetics, if you mix those two together, some good results.
What would happen if you mix, say, a mulatto, a half white, half black mulatto, with a black person? Do you think that would well, then you get like a quarter white and a quarter
Yeah, you
black.
would get a quarter right. And also, I actually have this theory. It's not concrete, but I've actually been working on this theory, and
Mm-hmm.
I call it racial reset.
Racial
And what it,
reset.
yeah, and what it basically is that say you have a mulatto, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have another white person. Well, the pure one, the pure race one, would have stronger genes than say the mixed race one, who was black and white. So my hypothesis is that over time, if we, because the number of mulattoes are already low, they the numbers of mulatto make up about 2% of the U.S. population.
Yeah.
So my theory is if like you have a mulatto and you breed them with a pure race in this example white, over time, if you keep keeping those two groups together, so like the mulatto breeds with the white person, and then the offspring of that mulatto and white person breeds with another white person, it'll eventually reset until you have like a full white descendant.
Basically, breed the mulatto out of existence, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds mean,
It
cruel
sounds
when
yeah.
you say
Putting it
that
that way
way.
sounds putting it that way sounds a little
But
yeah.
yeah, but I mean, family's family. So as long as you have the child,
Yeah.
and the same rule applies for like if you have a mulatto with that continuously mixes with blacks, continuously mixes with Asians, and so on. Now, where it gets tricky is how you raise the child, because culture plays a very, very, very important role in the upbringing of any child. And I feel like this is especially important if you have a mixed race child. Because, like I said earlier, growing up mixed race, you're told, you're not as bad as the blacks or, about the Hispanics. But, you're not quite white enough. So, we kind of got to keep you on the side. And then if you're growing up, and then you hear vice versa on the black side, where people will say, "Oh, you think you're so good because you're light skinned. You talk white, you act white," which I never understood because me growing up, I use proper English. I don't really use slang. So if me speaking proper English is speaking right, white, that really tells you that there's a problem with the rest of the world.
At the very least, the black community isn't particularly happy about the idea
Yeah.
of I don't know. I knew that there was a way to describe it before, but for some reason, well, for various reasons, they're not particularly happy about black people that I guess assimilate into white culture.
Oh, you are telling me. You know what else they hate? They, in the black community, they also hate, more specifically, the women. They especially hate seeing a black man with a white woman.
Oh yeah.
If you want to piss off a black woman, just be a black man and have a white lady around your arm. That will piss them off.
I see that periodically. I got a lot of
Oh yeah.
I got a lot of those Afrocentrist pages,
Oh yeah.
liked, and they'll show that stuff every once in a while. They're like, they'll shame black men along the lines of
Oh
like
yeah.
how they're so
Yeah.
weak they can't handle a black woman.
Yeah. Oh, you just can't handle a strong, independent black woman.
Exactly.
Oh man. And then what makes it even worse is that these women they'll have men encourage that type of behavior.
Hmm.
Uh, like if you go on Facebook and you go on any of these Afrocentric Facebook pages, and you ever see like they'll have a post about a black guy being with a white woman, there'll be a black woman talking about, oh, this guy's a coon, he's a sellout, and then in that same comment section, you'll have a black dude in there be like, oh, they just don't know how to handle our queens. They need to remember that our queens are Nubian goddesses and shit. And, and don't get me wrong, love is love. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you can't say that just because this person chooses to date outside his race that he's selling out.
Uh,
You know,
I'd really like to know where the hell all this Afrocentrist shit came from.
well, I can tell you, like I said, I'm in college right now. A lot of these, a lot of these things are coming from the college professors.
Really? Like the whole
Uh,
Nubian thing, is that literally straight from professors and shit?
the professors, they encourage it because, well, as you're aware, the left has a control on academia in the U.S.
Yeah.
A lot of our professors, a lot of our counselors are left leaning.
Yep.
And if you're left leaning, you have to play, to the races,
You have to
you
humor them at
know,
the very least. You gotta humor them.
yeah. And this is actually funny that you bring it up because I had a debate in one of my political science classes a couple of semesters ago about the whole were Romans black,
Were Romans
and
black?
yeah, were the Romans black?
Oh no.
Yeah, and basically, they were saying how like basically how you know the whole bullshit about the Romans, they had territory in North Africa and the Middle East, and how like they would race mix with the locals. So then we got into this whole debate because I was saying, well, one, the Romans weren't black because a majority of their territory were in North Africa, and as everybody knows, North Africa was controlled by the Arabs.
I even think the demographics were different at that time. I'm not sure, but there was a time where there was like a Greek ethnic group of sorts that dominated North Africa and some areas of the Palestinian area. I can't remember where it is. I'm gonna have to look into that. But even back then, the demographics were somewhat different. So there's no way in hell that they were black anyway, because that's sub-Saharan Africa, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and if you look at the geography of Africa, it would be extremely difficult for anyone in sub-Saharan Africa to travel through the Sahara Desert. Especially during that time where basically all you had was camels. You were basically asking for a death wish.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it wasn't until the Arabs started their conquest and started enslaving the local Africans that I feel that people should talk more about. A lot of people want to talk about the impact that whites had on slavery, but a lot of them choose to ignore the Arab slave trade. But that's another topic.
That's a whole other topic. The history of slavery is a very deep one indeed.
Yeah,
Holy crap.
it's a very deep one.
Lengthy.
It's not very straightforward
Nah.
either. You know,
Oh yeah.
which actually brings me up to another funny story about how I knew this kid who was very Afrocentric, talking about white privilege and everything like that. And I pointed out how ironic it was that he had Arab friends,
Hmm.
considering that the degree to the Arab slave trade, which which even today is still going on.
Yeah.
There's a country in Africa called Mauritania that still practices slavery.
Really.
It's a Muslim country, yeah, and it still practices slavery. It has a population of 3 million, and of those 3 million, 20% of people are enslaved.
Holy shit. I'm gonna have to look into that. That sounds fucking amazing. Like what the shit.
Hmm. Yeah. They didn't they didn't officially abolish slavery till the 1980s,
But they still probably keep
and
them
even
around.
yeah, and even to this day, they still don't enforce it.
Hmm. Mm-mm. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. But yeah, getting back to the whole mulatto topic, I was saying how culture is very important
mm-hmm.
because if you look at the African American culture, me for example, I more so identify with my German side than with the black side.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I'm ashamed of the black side, but it's just because growing up, I didn't really see a lot of positive things to identify with in the black community.
Right.
if if you look at African American culture, it glorifies violence. It glorifies easy, fast money. It glorifies sex. It's very hypersexualized. People like to talk about how sex sells in America.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just take a look in the African American community. It's about quadruple that.
Oh yeah. See, I grew up and I currently live in a majority black area, so I've seen it all. I've seen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's I don't know. It's pretty bad, honestly.
Yeah, and it's very hard to integrate yourself into if you're mixed race, because like I said, there's not a lot of positive things to integrate into it. But if you don't integrate into it, you're seen as selling out. So that puts a lot of stress on a mixed race individual, because if you want to have high standards, everybody wants to have high standards for themselves.
Yeah.
But if you risk ridicule and exile by not lowering your standards, unfortunately, what a lot of people do is they lower their standards and they just become, what they hate.
Yeah.
In this case, they would turn into a stereotypical black person, loud, aggressive, uh, non trustworthy. And, you know, uh, growing up, I was raised more so German. I have a couple of Hispanics in my family as well. Um, but mostly I grew up more so German. And I was taught to, be respectful. Um, Whenever speaking to an authority figure, yes, sir, no, sir. Um, basically, you know how to be a good person. And I'm not saying that, they don't teach you how to be a good person in the black community, but at the same time, when you have when you have a group of people that glorifies the negatives more than the positives, a lot of people are going to go towards the negative.
Yeah. I mean, I've met a number, at least a few, about a handful of mulatto people, usually half black and half white, and like this one guy, who my mother and my father went to school with his mother and father. And his father was black, his mother was white, and he kind of just fell into black culture when he was growing up. So yeah, he basically did exactly what you said. He became like them essentially.
Yeah, because, it was either he did it or he faced ridicule,
Yeah.
and, he was basically seen as an outcast. So he basically just lowered his standards and just joined into it. Me, I decided to say, fuck that. You know, I don't want to be a walking stereotype. It's hard enough being, mixed race. I basically feel like an outsider to both sides. Why make it worse for myself by just becoming a walking stereotype and, proving, the stereotypes that people hold as right, you know?
Yeah. I understand that completely. Oftentimes, because I went to school with that guy I mentioned a few moments ago, and I kind of wish that he really hadn't taken the path that he did. Because in elementary school, he wasn't like that. He became like this as
Oh, yeah.
junior high and high school came on, and pop culture really began to sink in, and it was, of course, it wasn't just him. In many cases, down here where I live, here down here in the deep south, I mean, sometimes the white kids get into all that kind of crap too.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of wiggers myself.
Yeah.
But and also another issue is aspirations and dreams. Basically, like, what do you want to, like, what career do you see yourself with? And education wise, if you go in the black community and you ask kids, name 5 presidents of the United States, they won't be able to tell you that. But if you ask the same kids in the black community, oh, tell me 10 basketball players or name me 10 rappers, they'll be able to do that in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And and I really find it a shame, because they're told that, basically that's all they can amount to. Me, for example, I've been stopped a lot of times by usually older black people telling me, oh wow, you got some good height on you, got some long arms. You should play basketball, man. And I'm like, no, thank you. You know, I'd like to do bigger things. You know, I don't really want to limit myself to that. Not saying that there's anything wrong to that, but I personally think that we have enough basketball players. You know, we have enough football players. What we need now is, doctors, lawyers, you know, hopefully a decent politician one day.
Eh, yeah,
And
among other things, we need
and
engineers, we need biologists, we need all kinds of stuff,
yeah,
all kinds of shit.
stuff like that. And I was on the bus the other day, and there was this black woman, and she was with her daughter,
Hmm.
and the daughter was saying how she wanted to be a doctor or a veterinarian, and then the mother was just like, you can't be no doctor in America. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, wow, how could any parent ever say that to their kid?
Just completely crushed her dreams right there. Holy shit.
Yeah, I'm like, you should want the best for your child. You
Yeah.
know, whether you believe America is a white supremacist society or not, which I don't believe, because, the evidence just shows if America was a white supremacist society, every white person would be living in fucking castles.
Oh, but you see,
But,
it's hidden. You see, it's
oh,
out there in
yeah,
the open, and yet it's hidden. You have to look for it, and if you
yeah,
don't see it, it's still there.
yeah.
It's like
But,
it's like the
yeah,
concept of white privilege. It's like
yeah.
it's hard to see your own privilege. Okay, well, I'm looking for it. Well, it's still there. Trust me.
I remember I had a friend. We were on campus, and since my college is in New York,
Hmm.
and everybody knows that New York is a liberal hellhole,
Oh yeah.
that they have like these whole safe spaces for LGBT, for Muslims, for Black. And one of my friends was stopped one day, and basically this Afrocentric person, she was female. At least that's how I call her. She probably called her some version of herself, some version of Zer or whatever. But yeah, she was like, your friend is benefiting from a country that has a very white supremacist system in it. And my friend, he's a calm person. Didn't get mad, didn't yell. As a matter of fact, he found it funny. He said, "So tell me, since you know me so well personally, what form of white privilege do I have? I wasn't aware I had any. Do I go into a bank and they say, 'Oh, sir, you're white. Here's $1 million.'" Uh, he's and then he used another example. He said, "When I go to the grocery store, the cashier doesn't say, 'Oh, sir, you're white. Cut in front of the line.'" And then she went over, the bullshit excuse. Well, do you know that as being a white male, you're less likely to be pulled over by police officers? Little did she know that my friend has 3 DUI
Oh
priors.
jeez. Oh man.
Yeah. So he
DUIs.
told her that. So he told her that, and then he was like, "And I can assure you, ma'am, he didn't care if I was white or not. He was still gonna write me the ticket."
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been pulled over twice by the same cop on the same spot, and he didn't give a shit either time.
Yeah, yeah, you know. And then she was like, and then she looked at me and she was like, and then she looked at me and she's like, "And you're okay with this?" And I'm like, "Am I okay with what? Am I okay with you harassing my friend just because he's white and you believe in some bullshit narrative that white privilege is a real thing? No, I don't appreciate that." And she was like, "Wow, you're just blind." And I always like when they say that. They always tell me I'm blind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's like I like how she expected you to like be upset by what he said.
Yeah, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Or my favorite thing is when I ask them, so give me some examples of white privilege, and then they'll tell me, "Oh well, I shouldn't have to tell you. You should already know." And I'm just there like, "Wow, great, great dialogue right there."
It's at least one advantage our side has over them. We're willing to explain our positions, they're not.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like me, I don't care if your opinion is wrong, but at least debate me about it. At least try to have a constructive conversation about it.
Yeah,
Don't say bullshit and then like try to like just run away from any type of conversation about it.
yeah, anything.
Yeah.
We are now at 40 minutes, about to hit 41 minutes. Is there any
Uh,
other topics you want to cover, or
um. Well. Sure. Have you guys talked about third wave feminism or anything?
third wave feminism?
Yeah.
We haven't talked about that at all. Uh, we usually don't
Uh,
talk
uh,
about like social justice stuff because I feel that it's kind of low hanging fruit. But
uh,
if that ties
yeah.
into like the general topic, then maybe.
Well, yeah. Actually, it does. Like I told you, both my parents are biracial, black and white, and my mom, before this whole third wave feminism thing started, she used to believe that the wage gap was real. So so I said, okay, let's dispel this myth right now. Both of my parents, they work in nursing, so they work in the same field. But my mom is in a higher position in at her job because one, she finished high school and she has a master's degree.
Oh, nice.
My dad, yeah, my dad, he's had his problems, and he has a high school diploma, you know, but because of my mom's education, she's in a higher position and she's making more money than him.
Hmm.
So, I told her, you're financially doing better than dad. You're in a higher position at your job than dad. So how can you honestly say that, you know, you're paid less than a man? And of course, my mom was like, "Oh, this conversation is over, that."
Oh boy.
But but yeah.
Yeah.
How long do the podcasts usually last?
They usually last between like well, it depends. We've been kind of trying to set a time, but usually it's between. Most recent ones was up to like 55 minutes, I think, and the other one was like 35 minutes. But what I'm thinking about trying to do is keep it between 40 minutes to an hour for now. But if we have more content in the future, we could probably shoot it up to an hour and
Oh,
30
yeah.
minutes or something.
Yeah. I
But
hope I
yeah,
explained, what it's like being a mulatto thoroughly. I feel like I didn't really get everything that I wanted to say.
well,
We covered physical, covered educational, cultural.
what
Um,
we could do was like at sometime in the future we could come back and have a lot more information on the table because I remember it was a whole nother group. It was an alt right group. Somebody made a post and they were sharing some sort of article for something related to race mixing, and a whole bunch of people started dropping red pilled articles and whatnot on the
oh
subject.
yeah, red pill. Yeah,
Really nice information on the subject, peer reviewed research, and I was like, holy shit, this is a fucking gold mine. I'm gonna go gather that up sometime. I would hope anyway if I
yeah.
can find that post because it's a lot of interesting information on race mixing in America and whatnot. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Basically, my stance on it is I prefer for race mixing to be kept to its low number as it is right now, because eventually, it puts the child, it puts them at an advantage, but it gives them a disadvantage as well. It'll definitely give them an advantage in like the educational field and in the workforce, but it'll also take a stress on like, just like their self-esteem. Like growing up, I kept to myself a lot because basically I felt like I didn't fit in with any group. I didn't hang out with the black kids because you know, basically how they upheld themselves. It was just very I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And what happened was, I started hanging out with a lot more whites. Where I live, there's a lot of Albanians, Serbs, Germans, Poles. So I started hanging out with them. And, you know, I always found it interesting how, like, they saw me as white,
Hmm.
not based on, like, my complexion or, like, the color of my skin, but just, like, how I upheld myself. Like, I basically showed them, like, yeah, I'm biracial, but, I'm still, like, a person at the end of the day. You, you know, uh, I'm not gonna chimp out. I promise you. You know, I'm not gonna go to any of your countries and sexually assault your women. You know,
Uh,
uh, but definitely, I feel like me personally, I feel like a lot of the issues in like in this country, in America specifically, is based on culture more so than race. Because I don't think anybody like I don't think a lot of people because like I know there's some people who like they just hate the hate and like they don't need a reason to. But at the same time, I feel like there's a lot more people who they don't necessarily hate the race, they hate culture.
yeah, I personally believe that race begets culture in a sense, although it's not quite that simple. But definitely a culture would not exist without a race specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's white culture, there's black culture, there's Asian culture. And a big thing that supports that claim is if you look at a lot of the a lot of the European countries,
Yeah,
they have a lot of similar customs and traditions.
a lot of overlap,
That's
particularly in the area of religion, but everybody understands that. I mean, Europe was quite literally known as Christendom for quite some time.
yeah. Like if you look at Asian culture as a whole, Asian culture as a whole, and you see this in a lot of the different Asian countries, they're a lot more collective. Uh, they're a lot more focused on education,
The worker bee.
on 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 working, uh, on tiger parenting. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
I think I have. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's basically well, the stereotype of the Asian parents that want their kids to study 24/7, make sure that they become a doctor or a lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard of
it's
that.
basically like that, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Granted, I do think that you should let your kid live a little,
Yeah.
but it. But hey, it's shown positive results. uh, you know, Asians, especially those that come to America, are one of the highest earners in America.
I believe they're higher earners than white people on average.
Yes, they actually are.
Yeah,
Now, you tell me, if America was this evil white supremacist country, how are they letting the yellow man on
exactly.
top?
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of shatters the concept of white privilege is essentially just the fact that Asians are higher earners on average and whatnot, and the fact that
Yeah,
they can do that at all. I mean, there you go.
yeah. And
What's this down here in Discord chat? Oh. Looks like Goth Geoff didn't make it this time, but it's no big deal.
unacceptable to the
Unacceptable.
gas chamber.
Yeah, to the gas chamber. All right,
But
well, we're hitting the 50-minute mark. All right, so I think that's about. What do you think? That's about all we can do today.
Uh, I think we've covered a lot of ground with cultures, race mixing.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, uh, but yeah, like I said earlier, I do believe that it's extremely difficult for mulattoes or biracial people to like it's really an issue of picking and choosing which side you identify more with, um, and basically what culture you're raised in. Uh, if I had a biracial kid, which I pretty much do want, uh, as we all know, I am quite the fan of Lauren Southern.
She's in a relationship now. Did you know?
What?
Yes.
With who?
I don't know. Everybody's like freaking out about it. There's been this image floating around with her and you ever heard of the YouTuber? And no, she's not dating him, but there's a YouTuber called The Guy T.
No, I haven't.
He's a black guy. I think he's from like Mexico or something. But she took a picture with him
A
because he's
black
kind
guy
of
from Mexico.
yeah. He's kind of a famous YouTuber or something. I'm not sure. He may not actually have been from Mexico. I'm not sure where he's from, but I've heard of him from YouTube. But bottom line, she took a picture with him once. Some alt right.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. He has like little braids.
I think I'm not sure.
He was in like a suit, right?
I've only seen the one picture of the guy, but basically she took a picture with this dude, and somebody took the "I'm in a relationship" a status update and kind of photoshopped that image over it.
Oh, I know exactly. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I've seen it too. And they call her a coal burner.
Yeah. People actually believe it's real, which is actually it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I saw the picture. I was like, Jesus, all she did was take a picture with this dude. That doesn't mean she's fucking him.
Yeah.
I'm like,
they also think
I'm
she's
like,
Jewish.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, wow, these people really take it far.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine if, like, you could sneeze in the direction of a black person and they think that you were trying to fucking have twins with him?
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely love the alt right, but sometimes they just get on my nerves. They spaz out way too much.
Yeah, they really spaz out. I mean, granted, I love the alt right. I really do feel like it in itself could become a alternative third party.
Or at the very least, they could infiltrate the Republican Party.
Oh yeah,
which is the goal, by the way.
Yeah. Or local elections.
That too.
During the 1850s, I believe, 1840s, 1850s, there was a party called the Know Nothing Parties.
Oh, I remember them.
Yeah,
those guys with they had a banner with an eye on it, I think, from what I remember. It was a really cool symbol.
Yeah, and they were the most successful third party in United States electoral history. There hasn't been a third political party that has been as successful as them.
Well, Libertarian Party had its chance.
Yeah, it did, but
rest in peace. Rest in peace.
But,
yeah, I think we're all good here. So
yeah, definitely. Hopefully, Lauren Southern is still single. I already have the future planned out with we're gonna have a small cottage with wheat fields.
The wheat fields are crucial.
Yes, if there's no wheat fields, it's not gonna work.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this, and I hope to be on the next future episodes.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll definitely have you on again, and next time we're gonna have like as much material as we can get on this issue. All right. So this is Dilly Bar, and signing out. I guess.